It got me onto this is I started thinking about the autism spectrum, the people who've written books about them. I started thinking about my knowledge of music and like how close would, or other things generally, how close you'd be to Chris Packham. I was a bit of an animal nut myself. I was probably hoping that I could be a veterinarian or something more to do with animals, and studied biology at A level, and none of that worked out. Even though I'd often been a high performing pupil, none of that worked out about a quarter of a century or more ago, or a bit less. And you tell me what the changing world events was then that caused that. But let's go back a bit to 2010 and Nick Dubin, who got done by the FBI for possession of child pornography. I think my dad got me his book about the same time that happened. And so that's telling a story about what the sort of things narcissists do, people with NPD, belittling, things you don't want to be associated with that much, or as if like, well, even that person is doing better than you. That person, it doesn't quite, it's not right, is it? And then they wrote another book with Tony Atwood. Now, Tony Atwood wrote The Complete Guide to Asperger Syndrome. But who's Tony Atwood? And they can't even call it Asperger Syndrome anymore. And yet, these people have marketed themselves. They're probably a sort of narcissistic collapse themselves. Richard Grannon. I don't know anything about Asperger Syndrome. I met him 9 years ago. That's what he said to me. And he has often smeared people with autism. And that's a very, you're not right or wrong, but you're not right kind of thing. On the one hand, he knows that you have to be careful what you call people. There's political correctness. But he's saying there's a hidden truth, isn't he? That they really are the bad ones. They're the ones who can't be moral, don't have moral reasoning. That's not necessarily the case. I wouldn't consider myself as not having moral reasoning. I'd probably consider most people with intellect as having, with a high level of intellect, as having some autistic traits. There's another quibbling elephant in the room. Like, who isn't? Like who isn't and who is, and why would that be? Who is? Why do people have this difficulty? There's such a defect, such a sublime ability, subliminal, high ability. It's very difficult to figure out. And this is a social and communication disorder, sensory disorder, cognitive disorder. A hot potato in psychology for a long time. Most of the people Tony Atwood references who did research, it was around the year 2000. So we've known about these things for a while, and so should he have done. But back to Dubin, I like the knowledge of music, thinking how, do you know enough about something? Do you have what it takes? He was a university radio host, and he did a very autistic thing to find things out before you're interested in them. To choose something to be interested in. His was jazz music. And also a teacher and helper of people with autism. That doesn't always work, does it? That doesn't always work. The person with the problems can have too many problems to help other people with problems. You have the perspective of problems of it, but not necessarily the perspective of not having the ability. You perhaps don't have that sort of ability, those skills as a teacher or teaching assistant.